Hi, I'm Marc, and on this channel I talk about Brexit and UK politics. 1 year into his term, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is facing significant problems, at least according to an expert. After the chaos of his predecessors Liz Truss and Boris Johnson, Sunak has brought stability again and regained lost international respect. That at least is the opinion of Marc from Lancaster University, and he said that to the German press agency. But the situation is even more difficult than when he took office in October 2022. The economic consequences of the pandemic and the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East threatened Sunak's promises that he made at the beginning of the year. And don't get me started on Brexit here. Contrary to what Sunak announced, the national debt is rising, said Garnett. The economy is stagnating at best, and inflation, which the Prime Minister wants to halve, remains what Garnett calls stubbornly high. In addition, waiting times for medical treatment continue to rise, and the government's measures against irregular migration were not effective. Sunak was elected head of his Conservative Party on October 24th in 2022 and was subsequently appointed by King Charles III on October 25th, as head of government, of course. The Tories recently suffered crushing defeats in 2 by-elections to the British Parliament. The opposition Labour Party is well ahead in polls and could take over government after the next general election, probably in 2024. And there are currently no challenges within the party, said Garnett. This is also because most Tory MPs expected defeat at the next election. However, if the Prime Minister is unable to reduce the gap to Labour in the polls, the Conservatives' morale is at risk of falling even further, and potential candidates for successor are likely to blatantly appeal for support, said the expert. This would make the party appear as unleadable as it did under Sunak's predecessors. And it's not a good week for him because the personal phone number of British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak was recently published and is considered a security breach. Metro wrote on Sunday that he had used this number for many years until he was targeted since he returned from the Middle East tour, where negotiations for the return of the hostages in Gaza were continuing. A video release shows the moment the Prime Minister's number was called until his office failed to respond to the matter. This is not the first time a British Prime Minister's number has been published. Boris Johnson has been advised to stop using his personal phone while in office, and that for security reasons after his number was found to be easily accessible on the internet. But that now was just a small side topic to lighten things up a bit, which are not very bright at the moment. But in order to get out of the bad situation overall, Sunak has, among other things, taken up the issue of migration I mentioned earlier. And there is a reason for that. People are more worried about immigration if they are dissatisfied with their lives, as a study shows. This obviously applies not only when fear of job or money depresses the mood, but also in the case of personal strokes of fate. Losing a loved one changes everything. A place at the table remains empty, you fall asleep alone and wake up alone, life needs a new rhythm. And sometimes with such a stroke of fate, things change that at first glance have very little to do with everything. Voting intentions, for example. 3 economists came across this strange connection a few years ago when they were evaluating surveys from Great Britain. People whose wife or husband had recently died are subsequently less likely to vote for the party in power at the next general election, regardless of whether the Prime Minister was a Tory or a Labour politician. The likelihood of widows voting for the governing party decreases by 10%, even though in the vast majority of cases the party in power can probably do absolutely nothing about the death of people's partners. The COVID was a different matter, and the depressed mood apparently means that people would also like to send the current government into the desert, as we would say. Whether people are happy or not has far-reaching consequences. Fabian Kratz from the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich has taken up this idea in a study that has now been published in the renowned journal European Sociological Review. To do this, Kratz analyzed data from the Socio-Economic Panel, which is a large repeat survey in which tens of thousands of people here in Germany have stated over many years how satisfied they are with their lives. Kratz contrasted these values with concerns about too much immigration, which were also regularly surveyed. And in fact, people tend to have more critical attitudes towards migration when their life satisfaction decreases. No one could assume that there is a comprehensive calculation behind this. Viewing immigration more skeptically would be a rational action if, for example, one fears more competition for jobs, says Kratz. You feel economically pressured, which makes you more dissatisfied, and you look with suspicion or hostility towards those you consider to be the cause of the threat, he says. In fact, people seem to be more worried about immigration even when it is not immediate fear about their job or money that is depressing their mood. But perhaps something far away, a rather non-political event such as the death of the partner, has to do with it. Sociologist Kratz suspects that people generally tend to look for scapegoats as soon as things get worse for them and do not necessarily base their choice on consistent criteria. However, according to these findings, the negative attitude towards immigrants decreases as soon as life satisfaction increases, which could also broaden the focus in the migration debates. Apparently, people already think more cosmopolitanly when they are simply happy. Yeah, but many in Great Britain are not happy at the moment, and that's the point why I put this in the video. And therefore the theme will work to a certain extent, and it is currently a topic again. 500 asylum seekers on a residential ship, that is the British government's new deterrence strategy. But will it work? That's the question still. The Portland residents are still skeptical, because once again in the southern English city of Portland, one of the poorest coastal communities in Great Britain, it is in the spotlight because of the multi-story residential ship Bibi Stockholm I reported about several times. A good 2 months after the discovery of Legionella bacteria and the eviction, the British government is allowing migrants to be accommodated there again. I said that, I think, in a live stream. The barge was rented as a dormitory for up to 500 people until their asylum procedure is decided. The ship is causing controversy in Portland. And there were Euronews reporters around there on site and talking to people that said that it doesn't make sense to them. They don't think it makes sense to most people who have a heart for other people. Another man really puts the finger on the sore spot here. He said, I think most people are afraid of the target audience it is, which is single men, and that's really what it's about. A woman takes the side of the asylum seekers there. Asylum seekers should be treated properly, and if their claim is legitimate, they should be integrated into our communities. I don't agree with keeping them like prisoners. I find it inhumane, she said. And with a controversial measure, Rishi Sunak's government wants to solve the space problem when accommodating irregular migrants and reduce the high costs of accommodation in hotel rooms. Yeah, but look at the costs for this ship, by the way. But the backlog in processing asylum applications is enormous. 175,000 people are currently waiting for a decision. And meanwhile, the Bibi Stockholm is anchored in Portland, also as a deterrent for those who want to attempt the dangerous crossing across the English Channel. And that is something the government tries. A barge on fenced-in private property in the harbour was intended to show that there is no luxury in the British asylum process. Well, of course, there were Legionella bacteria found aboard, and there are also concerns about the fire safety and about right-wing extremist activity in the area, so there's no luxury at all. But the British government says the barge is now safe again and will reduce the cost of accommodating asylum seekers in hotels. But will this deterrent strategy work in the end? The Portland residents are skeptical. They are not sure if people like it, if the boat is anchored there with a large group of people. And a lot of people in Portland come and have to be checked to see whether they are economic migrants or refugees, and there is a backlog and people have to go somewhere. But the people in Portland just don't know if this is the right place, but they are dealing with that because they have to go somewhere. But as you know, a second legal action is underway in the British High Court to challenge the government's decision. However, the British Home Office is confident that asylum seekers will be accommodated safely on this residential ship. But as I said, the topic of migration is quite blown up by the government there compared to Germany. That's just a joke what's happening in the UK. And the discussion is here a little bit differently. But nevertheless, if you want to see another video, the next one is right here in the end screen. I'll see you there. I'll be back.